My name is Mark Fitzgerald. I am the Director of Customer Care for Boise State University. I work for the Office of Information Technology, and I've been part of an organization known as the Mobile Learning Initiative. And this is an organization that has been working with students, faculty, and staff to provide experimentation and the opportunity to transform the classroom setting using mobility and technology. With that, this is the first of 5 webinars Boise State will be presenting about mobility in the classroom. Today's webinar is talking about our case for supporting mobility and concierge service in that support. With that, I want to point out on your navigation, your chat window, you are welcome to ask questions anytime. We have people that are there to answer those questions. We might save some of those questions for the end and address them as part of the Q&A. At some point during the conversation, I will periodically ask some questions you can answer by looking at the participant list, and there is a series of buttons, one of which has a checkbox in which you can answer yes or no. With that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Mark Fitzgerald from Boise State University. Boise State University was recently recognized by online colleges as one of 11 colleges going all in on mobile, and that was quite a surprise for us. It wasn't something that they solicited us on or that we were approached about. We were recognized for some of the things that we've been doing throughout the industry. And as the article says, are we making big progress? Yes, we are. And it is something that we've been excited about. Now, as we take a look at what it means to support mobility, one of the very first things that we took a look at was, what do we need to do? How do we need to be set up? How can we best serve everybody involved? And it invoked a picture in my mind of President Reagan standing in Berlin saying, tear down this wall. Now, the reason it invoked that is you have to envision where we are and how we are set up. We literally tore down the walls of our support center and moved our call center and our support people to the center of our brand new learning building called the Instructional Learning Center, and into a place branded the Zone. But to understand this, you have to understand where we came from. Here we have a picture of our call center in a building at the far end of campus. This is where we came from. It was a traditional setup where a lot of universities will set up their support center. It's on the edge of campus, it's out of the way, it's not taking up that valuable real estate that we want to use for education. It's set up in a traditional cubicle farm. And yes, we did do some walk-in traffic, but you can see from the window it was designed to be very transactional. You hand us something, we hand you something back. Maybe you're there to check out a set of installation desks. We knew if we wanted to be strategically aligned with the university and really be part of the learning experience, to be able to support desktops, laptops, handheld devices, we needed a place that we could interact with people. We needed a place that we could stand and consult with them. We could sit down and take a look at the device. It was much more than a walk-up window. We needed a walk-in environment where everybody could come in and focus. Again, that's where we came up with the Zone. It was a location that we could sit down and interact with people in a large setting. We wanted to tear down those walls. So this is where we're at today. This setup is very different. It's much more ergonomically aligned, and it is a place where people can walk up with their devices. We can sit down with them. It's more of a consultation setting. And what do we offer? So first of all, let's talk about how many of you offer some sort of walk-in support. If you would check yes or no in the participant section if you are currently offering some sort of walk-in support. As these are coming in, right now we've got 11 participants having answered, 10 of which have said yes, they offer walk-in support. 1 did not. That roughly matches the research that we found. The organization known as HDI, formerly the Help Desk Institute, has done a lot of research in walk-in support, and they've said that 80% of higher education institutions offer walk-in support as some sort of a support channel. Now, industry-wide, that goes down to about, if I remember the numbers off the top of my head, across all businesses, that is less than 50%. So within higher education, this is a very common form of walk-in support. We wanted to say, how do we take that the next step forward? And the way we decided to do that was the concept of concierge service. Now, concierge service, the first time that we mentioned concierge service, people had this vision of a stuffy bellhop willing to do anything for a price. That's not what I wanted to offer our users. That's not the life I wanted to live. I wanted a partnership. And as we were taking a look at the definition of concierge, the French word keeper of the keys came. And I really liked that. That resonated with me. What can we do that we can keep the keys and work with people to unlock new services for them? And that word consultation kept coming back. It wasn't that we were just going to fix their device. We wanted to sit down and consult with them on what they were doing with the device. Was this the right type of thing for what they're doing? And so we came up with a list of what we offer. So set up in the zone, we have lab computers. In fact, we've got about 12 workstations set up. We've got a variety of Macintosh and PC. We've got color printing, black and white printing, a number of different things. But we knew we needed more. We needed cutting-edge devices. And so we came up with a series of devices that we could check out to students. These could be MP3 recorders. These could be video cameras. They could be iPads. They could be Chromebooks. They could be MacBooks and PCs, projectors, a number of different things that would help the student be involved with what they're doing at the university. And mobility played a key role in that, especially when it came down to technology assistance. Being able to walk in and say, hey, I have a device here. What can I do with that device? How can I best use this in my education? And so that technology assistance on how to set up their mail, how to use a mobile device went a long way. And that went into the consulting. How do you take this and take it a step further? How do you use this in your coursework? We also did things like breakout room scheduling and a number of other things within the zone. But we had to make a few decisions. First of all, what devices were we going to support? We made the decision to be device agnostic. All right, if you're going to walk in with a BlackBerry, as we've got here, or if you're going to walk in with an iPad, if you're going to walk in with a Kindle, we're going to sit down and consult with you. A lot of what we were trying to accomplish in training our people is saying, hey, we are technology support professionals. We're going to train on what is common amongst these devices and how to troubleshoot these devices. And that way we're prepared for anything that walks through the door. Now, when I first mentioned this to my staff, they were a little leery. I think, to say the least, they had concerns. There had to be some sort of boundaries. We can't be all things to all people. And after talking about this, planning for this, the very first thing that we posted as our boundary is do not crack the case. Okay, let me explain what that means. It meant that we were not going to be in the business of hardware repair. People, if they had a problem with their device, we could sit down and consult and say, hey, this appears to be an issue with your video card, or it seems to be an issue with your power supply. You'll need to get in contact with your vendor or another repair shop to get that repaired. So our first boundary was do not crack the case. But that boundary of not cracking the case helped shape some of our other boundaries. Again, it came back to consultation. We're there to help the student be successful in the education environment. And if it means that we need to clean off a virus, we're willing to give that an attempt in cleaning off the virus. But our bounds are, we're here as a consultation method. We're here to consult with you, talk with you, work through the issues. But there are going to be things that we cannot do. Even so, with so many different devices, it is hard to keep up. It is hard to keep up with all the changes. You take a look even at the technology of the past. It's hard to get rid of things out of the classroom. And as students bring in different devices, it ranges from all sorts of technology. Our average student age is 26 right now, which is much older demographic and profile than a lot of universities. And you see students of all ages with the most cutting edge of devices. You also see students of all ages with very old devices, just trying to make it through. They're back in school to be retooled. They don't have a lot of money to spend on a new device. What can we do to help them? And so in our training efforts, in our scoping efforts, we wanted to include them, but we realized that, you know, if I'm taking a Palm Pilot from 1992, I'm not necessarily going to be able to get the latest version of Google Apps onto that device and get them reading their email. We had to find the ability to say, this is what we're able to do, and this is what we're not able to do. One of the things that we wanted to do, though, is we wanted to be able to do more with what we have. Now, what I mean by that is we didn't come upon a big pile of money at the end of the rainbow to be able to do this initiative. We wanted to be more strategic in how we were supporting the university. And that meant more classrooms, more devices, more printers, more options, everything in between. And as we take a look at mobility, that meant more iPads, that meant more laptops, that meant mobile classroom. How were we going to do more with what we had? That meant doing less. It meant slimming down actually the number of staffed labs that we had, reducing the number of hassles for users so they didn't have to call us as much. It meant using less space. So as we take a look at supporting the university in this mobile initiative, some of the things that we did is we took our lab computers that were in staffed labs and we moved those out to the hallways. We called these kiosks. And these kiosks are now spread out through all of our lobbies, hallways, and key parts of the university. We took those labs and we closed them down. We turned them back to the university, the physical space. So the university got a classroom out of the deal. I then had people that used to be working, money that was used for those people that was working, and I was able to put them into a support role. And now they're the people sitting in this zone doing that consultation work, working with people. So it is doing more with what we have and still providing support to the university. Now, as we take a look at the lab usage, the number of computers being used by students has actually increased. And so we are actually better serving the students than we were before. And that is taking this from a strategic perspective. We're trying to meet the students where they're at. Now let me tell you a little bit more about the Mobile Learning Initiative, and it will put some of this into context. The university turned to our professors and said, we want to increase the use of mobile devices in classrooms, and offered to people to write up proposals on what they would do to use mobility in the classroom. In return, we took a series of iPads or other devices and made those at the disposal of these instructors. There'll be future webinars really focusing in on the educational aspect and what those professors did with these devices. But from the support perspective, we said, all right, now we have quite a few of these devices, and more importantly, we have students running around with these devices that haven't necessarily used one in the past. And that's why having a walk-in support center has become so critical to that. There's also a lot of back-end things that needed to be taken care of. How do you manage these devices? Do you manage these devices? Do you provision these devices? Do you donate them? Are they the universities or are they the individuals? Do you use one type of device or a multitude of devices? Now, we've taken this from an experimental point of view, and we've tried a lot of these different things. First of all, we've made the decision that they are university devices. We weren't going to just donate a $600 device to a student taking a class, but they are checked out to them for an entire semester. And so what do you need to do that they can move in and use that device on their own, as their own, for 3-4 months? Now, that involved many teams. This isn't just an IT initiative. This has involved our instructional design team, which is academic technologies. This has involved our library. This has involved our Center for Teaching and Learning. Never in the history that I've been here at Boise State for the past 7 years have so many groups come together to work as one in being able to deliver to the university. It's been a gratifying experience. Again, that comes under doing more with what we have, is reducing the duplication of effort, for bringing down those walls that exist between the different departments. Now, it also means that we need to stay the same, and we need to put some level of standardization into there. As we've discussed many times, we don't have this magic answer of, does everybody have an iPad across the entire university, or do we build for the lowest common denominator? We've been taking this experiment and putting a single class into a homogeneous environment. That makes it easier for support, makes it easier for the professor teaching. That doesn't necessarily make it easier going forward of making a decision. Do we use one device or many different types of device? Certainly students have come with a variety of devices. Some might be using a mobile phone. Some might be using a tablet. Some might be using their laptop. These are all different things that we're continuing to address and in support of our professors. And so from the perspective of support, we haven't become specialists in just the iPad. We've had to become specialists in mobility. And as we've done this, this means that we have to understand many things even if we don't necessarily have access to them. A couple of things that we've done to help do this. Now, each of the managers has a cell phone provided or mobile device provided by the university. So what we've done is that one manager has a Windows phone, one manager has a BlackBerry, another one has an iPhone, and that way we have a variety of these different types of devices. So if somebody has a question, there at least is something in the office that we can go and reference. It is certainly something that has worked, but again, the foundation aspect is learning how to troubleshoot, learning how to be confident that you can find the answer in searching your knowledge base and searching the web, and in doing so, we've been very successful. Now, one of the warnings that I would have for you is be prepared to be discovered. As we've taken a look at this, we were all ready to go our first year and saying, all right, we think we've got this down, we've got a little bit of boundaries, but there are a lot of unknowns. And so rather than heavily advertise that we have all these devices for you to check out in this new location, we did a quiet opening and just opened the door. Now, the interesting thing about just opening the door is if we were on the peripheral of campus, no one would have ever found us. But being in the center of campus, in a glass-walled room, and something that says the zone, eventually people stop in and say, can I use this computer? Or what do you do here? And it only takes 2 or 3 people to come in and say, oh, I understand I was told that I could get a laptop here, or I can get an iPad here. I can get a mobile device that I can use for the next 72 hours. And pretty soon, more and more people have come. And so we still have not heavily advertised the zone, but it is at or near capacity the majority of the day. We often have lines out the door to be able to sit down and talk with somebody, to be able to use the computing device, or to be able to check out devices. We have a reservation system in which devices are constantly coming in, quickly being turned around for the next person so that they can use those devices. But we also knew something in the back of our mind, that we needed to be more than just technology, and we needed to be something different to the students. And what I mean to be more than just technology is this zone and this student support system needed to be something that the students considered their own. It was more than just technology. Now, we have a picture here of one of our student employees, and it's called the Twilight Zone, and I know that the fine print is hard to read, but our help desk manager had an incredible vision of actually turning this also into a student art studio in which weekly to monthly basis different type of artwork is come and put in and on display for other students to see. And this campus living room, if you will, has a constant display of artwork, and that's really helped in being part of the student body. This is their area, and it involves technology, but it involves much more than technology. It is student employees helping students be successful being students. And if it means specialized furniture, if it means a place for them to congregate, if it means artwork that's important to them, it means that we're being successful by reaching our student body. Assessment has been a key part of the Mobile Learning Initiative. Now, we've been assessing and going over how devices are used in the classroom, how instruction takes place. We've been assessing a lot of things. One of the things I'm going to share with you today is assessment of our checkout devices. This is our latest numbers in September, and we've taken the devices and said, when are they being checked out? And we thought it was very interesting that it actually takes a lull over the noon hour, but that consistently during the busiest times for classes, the busiest time for people coming and checking out devices. Not too much of a surprise. Now, as we've been successful with the zone, we've decided to replicate this in other areas. We've gone out and we've actually put a zone now in our student union and in our brand new business building. Geographically across campus, that is in 3 different locations: our center of campus, our west end of campus, and our east end of campus. It also has reached a variety of different type of individuals. In our center classroom building, a lot of that is our freshmen and sophomores that are there for general education classes. We've got our business majors on the west end of campus, and in our student union, that is closer to a lot of our juniors and seniors where they're taking classes, let's say in engineering or other specialty majors. And so the demographics, as well as the patterns of what is checked out and when they're checked out, differ by area. For example, if we were to analyze just our business building, we'll find that it does not slow down during that noontime hour, that they are just as busy, if not just a little bit busier from that noon to 1 time hour. But in the areas that we offer food in our student union, in our instructional learning center, it takes quite a bit of a dip. People seem more interested in food and less interested in going checking out a device or sitting down and talking with their device. But come 1 o'clock, that shoots right back up, and they're done with their meal, they're ready to go. We've also taken a look at the assessment of our support. Now, this is a Wordle actually one of our students put together. What they did was they took all of the feedback that we get from our service calls and put them into a program that calculates what were the most common words. And at first this was just a little cute diagram. As we took a look a little bit more closely at it, it actually shows us where our strengths and weaknesses are. Let me go a little bit more into depth on this because it helps understanding where we came from. From the phone perspective, for years we've been surveying people as they've called to us. They've called to us, we've written down their name, we've worked with them, and we've documented what we did. Afterwards, we sent out a survey and said, how did we do? And we got that feedback. As we moved into this walk-in environment, we found that we were lacking in not getting that information. We just weren't keeping track of people that came through the door. And as we analyzed that, we came from a history of only being focused in on faculty and staff. As we changed our focus to more of students and being strategically aligned to what's happening in the classroom, one of the first changes that we made was we imported all of the students into our call tracking system so we could keep track of students and not just our faculty and staff. Now that we had access to their names, we needed to change our process and actually keep track of people coming through the door. And that's still a challenge because a lot of these in the door is a quick question of, hey, what time are you guys open to, or can I get email on this device? If the answer is yes, often they're out in 30 seconds. So we might tally that yeah, we got a question about email, but we don't know who that person is. But if we're sitting down and working with them for 5–10 minutes and really doing that consultation role, the expectation is we're gathering the information, documenting who it was and what we did, so we have a better trend on what to prepare for, what to train for, and how to forecast that for the future. The result also, though, is they now get a survey saying, I understand you sat down with one of our technicians. Tell us about that experience. And the feedback that we've gotten of all sorts of things, of thank you, of I had an issue with this, or the great job, or helpful in different things. But if you start going through there, there's also other issues that we need to take a look, that we need to be focused and really listen. And that's something from assessment has made a big difference for us, as we've learned that, hey, people think that we're rushing them. It helps us to be able to slow down and really listen to their issue and be fully prepared to address the things that they've been talking about. As I take a look at the Mobile Learning Initiative, this really is about strategies. This is about what is your university wanting to be. As we take a look at the strategy of Boise State University, one of the key things is to deliver a signature education to students. The use of mobility is a key part of that strategy. Now, it's easy for a technologist to think that strategy is something that happens of those that deal directly with students. It happens in the classroom. But there's a lot of things in the background that need to happen for those strategies to take place. I might not be the person in front of every classroom teaching on any number of things, but I do have a responsibility to make sure that the wireless is in place, that the collaboration tools that we're providing to them work, that we're providing the right type of things at the right times to the right people. And having that focus on strategy has really changed our mindset of how we've gone about delivering technology to the different people. It's gone about a different way of how we support technology. It was really easy to say, well, I support the people that support students. And so I want to make sure that the registrar's office is completely functional. I want to make sure that the faculty IT staff have the resources they need. But really, it's gone much deeper than that. As I've focused on how can I make a difference personally in the life of a student, there's a lot more emotion involved. There's a lot more, I can do more with what I have. I can be more creative in what I do. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn the time over to you and ask, what questions do you have about supporting mobility? And maybe we can go into a little bit more detail on some of the initiatives that we've done. And if you have any questions, go ahead to the chat window and just kind of on the main room, you can type in those questions and we can go to answering them. You can see a couple people are typing in there, so we'll give that just a moment, let them finish typing. Diane asks, I wonder if you might have a quick shared training for public library staff. That would be an interesting thing, what we have available for our training. I'll see if we can put something together and get that out onto the Mobile Learning Initiative site, because certainly what we do is very similar. Though we are not in the library with our zone, and our library has worked very closely with us, we do a lot of similar things, and I know a lot of people have done this in the form of an information commons. And to give you an idea, a lot of the research we did in preparing for the zone was focusing on how do we do an information commons. And that sort of research went a long way. And I do have a white paper or two on information commons, and we have an upcoming magazine article about walk-in support that we should be able to get posted up there and be able to share out. LCSC asks, what do your work-study regular help numbers look like? We do use work study. For those of you not familiar with what work study is, student employees can be normal employees of the university that work 20, 25 hours a week, but we also have people that get paid for out of other funds called work study funds. It's a form of scholarship in which the students work for their scholarship money. And we actually have currently 12 students on work study, and we will use all of their work study funds till it runs out, and then we will transfer them over to normal pay, is what we call it. But more importantly, how many student employees? Between our lab system, our zone system, and our help desk, we have about 50 student employees. We also have about 10 full-time employees in that mix that also do desktop support. Now that sounds like a lot, but we're doing about 40,000 transactions each year. And now that we're keeping better track of our walk-in numbers, we actually have a better understanding of what those are. And in the future, as we take our labs and continue to transition the labs from being your stereotypical just answering questions about printing and the basics of the computer to be more of that consulting and changing more of our labs into a zone, we have that those that watch over the labs to transition those positions to a more technical, more customer service, sit down and really work with people. So overall 50 student employees and about 10 full-time employees for about 40,000 transactions. Lori asks, do you have peak times during the semester that you're assisting students, or is it pretty consistent throughout the year? Well, we always have that beginning of the semester rush. The first 2 weeks, or the last week of August, first week of September, we do about a month and a half to 2 months worth of work in those 2 weeks. So that's still a very difficult time for us. But we have a consistently high level of work throughout the semester. We do see minor peaks during midterms, and we see an increase towards the end of the semester. But it's also been changing. One of the things outside of Mobile Learning Initiative, we've also refreshed our University Foundations coursework, and part of that is we've added a section called Digital Fluency. And with the digital fluency, each people in these University Foundations courses, each student now has an assignment in which they need to use technology, and they're being referred to the zone, among other places, for technical assistance with those assignments. And so we're seeing more and more towards the end of the semester becoming a peak time. So if midterms, beginning and end are our peak times, there's not a lot of lull in between. So it is consistently, but it's been consistently growing as well. How did we go about figuring out our costs, staffing models, and resource allocation? We did a lot of homework, but at the end of the day, it took jumping in and seeing what it was like. Now, some of the homework that we did, we used a staffing model called the Erlang-C that's very common in a help desk environment. We actually took those formulas and applied them to staffing non-phone center areas. We also sat down with our lab managers and different people across the system and said, what are some of the things that you've seen? What are your busy times? How would you go about staffing? And it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot of projecting based on data that they had. And then it was getting our feet wet and being willing to adjust. And adjust we've had to do. As the needs of the university have evolved, so has the support of it. We've been putting less emphasis on the phones and more emphasis on the in-person conversation. And those in-person conversations do tend to last a little bit longer than a phone call, and so that we've had to adjust accordingly. But as we've done that, we've actually stayed pretty much employee neutral as far as the number of employees that we've had on staff. We've just had to shuffle about what their duties are and where they're at. Okay, next question is, what is the biggest challenge and how did we overcome it? I think, Craig, the biggest challenge was the unknown. We knew we'd have lots of different type of devices, but we didn't know what type of devices would come through. And so the first person to bring their Nook in and say, how do I access my email on my Nook, kind of said, we got to do some homework here. And it took some researching out, and it was a fun interaction to talk with the person and learn a little bit about a Nook, because we didn't have any Nooks that we were checking out. And it really is a challenge to face what is being said and who's setting the expectations for us. You know, as a faculty member says, go down to the zone, they'll be able to help you. That's one set of expectations. But what we don't know is, go down to the zone, they'll be able to, and faculty members may say any sorts of things at that point. And so setting the correct expectation as they've walked through the door has been probably the biggest challenge, in addition to not knowing what they're coming through the door with or asking questions about. To what degree is BYOD part of our strategy? And I meant to bring this up, so thank you for asking that. BYOD, or the concept of bring your own device, is a huge part of our strategy. You know, as I've sat down with industry leaders talking about BYOD from a business perspective, from an educational perspective, from even what's being used BYOD in a lot of different verticals, I always tell them that universities as a whole have been doing bring your own device for 20 years. It has not been uncommon for a student to show up with their own laptop and bring it into a classroom. Now, we've gone from concerns of how do you keep that device charged or plugged in to how do you handle wireless. This form of BYOD is taking it one step further, because how do they use their own device in mobility use with other people has been a challenge, because it's a variety of different devices. But we've also approached the BYOD of, here is your own device. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. If you were to chart up our strategy, our initial strategy was we would have students bring their own device, and that a faculty member would teach around the different type of devices. Now, that is great on paper, but that is actually a challenge for individual professors, and we wanted to take out some of the challenges in the form of experimentation. We wanted to keep variables at a minimum. And so for our initial classes, we provided the devices. It wasn't bring your own. And I think the very first class, we standardized on iPads, and we provided 29 iPads, and one person had their own iPad. And so with that, it was not a bring your own device. But the more and more that we leave the experimentation phase of the Mobile Learning Initiative into mainstream education, the more and more that it shifts the burden of bring your own device onto the support center. And the foundations for that is having a clear walk-in center. It is being prepared to be device agnostic, and it is being prepared to support the person in the strategies and in the initiatives they're trying to accomplish. And so to do that, you need to have your own bounds. So BYOD certainly is a big part of what we've been focusing in. All right, was asked, did we have an in-house system to track those numbers? And yes, I kind of answered that question. We are using a call tracking system, but in assessing this, we have a number of different systems in place. If somebody comes and asks us for support, we're tracking them in one system. If they're using one of our mobile devices through a checkout, we're checking out who we're keeping track of who we check those out to, and also keeping track of what devices they're checking out. And there are a number of other systems. The interesting thing with assessment is you need to be creative in where you're taking a look at different things. We also rely on EDUCAUSE and other outside entities that do standardized assessment to come into Boise State, ask questions on our behalf, and then we can be able to compare those against other higher ed institutions. All right, how essential is our LMS in our mobile strategy? Now that is an interesting question that I'm not sure I have the answer to. We do, our LMS is Blackboard, and they do have a mobile app in which we have access to use. So we do know that from the devices, people are accessing the LMS. Are they being fully functional? Is it fully integrated? Not to my knowledge, but I believe we'll have future webinars in which we'll more fully address that use, and that's something that I think we can take back and develop the answer to that question. Next question is, how have we collaborated with faculty regarding allowing the use of mobile devices in classroom? Well, it wasn't too long ago that I was taking classes, and when I took out my laptop, I was said, hey, that's distracting, will you put that toy away? And so there certainly are faculty in each camp of, is the mobile device the right thing to use? Well, where we started with this mobile initiative is that we have collaborated with specific faculty that have brought proposals to us in saying how they will use mobility in the classroom. And then we've taken cohorts of those people, our academic technologies teams sat down with them and said, now what can we do to be of support for you in being able to accomplish this experiment? In return, they've had to turn around and document their findings and really emphasize the assessment part of where they were successful and where they were not. As that has gone out, we've seen more adoption because faculty are relying on their peers in able to figure out how they can use technology and mobility in their classroom through other means. And so it's been a multifold thing, but to really get faculty to embrace this change, it has to come from other faculty. And then we need to be there to be able to support them in what they do. We've also been asked how many devices that we check out and how many different types of devices that we check out. We have about just shy of 100 different checkout items within OIT. We also have another 50 or so checkout items in our library, and then our academic technologies staff keeps track of the devices that we check out to professors to use in these large classroom settings. And so all in all, there are about, there is just about, I understand, about 300 devices that are used for checkout in varying different forms. Now we check out Wacom tablets, we check out iPads, we check out Google Chromebooks, MacBook Airs, Windows, Dell laptop, Windows devices. We check out MP3 recorders, we check out Epson projectors. I'm going through the list. There's a number of different specialty items that we have one or two of, and we've been very successful in it. Some of the challenges we faced with that is somebody may check out an iPad and then come back to us and say, well, I was intending to connect this iPad to a projector. Do you have a dongle that I can connect this via VGA or DVI or HDMI? And so some of these peripherals have been quite a challenge for us to keep track of. From a management point of view, if you embrace this, another thing we've had problems with are power, the bricks to power these devices. Do we check them out with power cable? And if we do, how do we make sure that it comes back with the device? And so we have, in some cases, bundles in which they check out a bag that has a number of different things, and when they return it, we have to check the bag and make sure that it has all the different components. In other cases, we actually check out the laptop as one item and the power brick as another, and that way it shows up in our checkout system that they have two devices checked out, a power cable and a laptop. And so some of the management behind those devices has, evolved in the course. But you know what? Where we've been successful is we've been getting these things into people's hands. And at first, because we hadn't done a lot of advertising, it was a little slow. The other day I went to get a device quickly for a professor that needed to do something and found out we didn't have a device available in any one of our three zones. Every single device that we had was checked out. The shelves were bare. And that was a sign of being successful. And we've slowly grown this, but we've also slowly started encouraging people of the mainstream equipment more and more. This is for your experimentation, this is for your learning and being able to do things. As things become more mainstream, we've gotten more of the cutting edge things and allowed the students to bring their own mainstream device. The most popular items for checkout by far have been our iPads. As we've taken a look at all of the different aspects across campus, people have had a fascination with that type of device. Do we have other type of tablets in there? Yes, but they have not been nearly as successful as our iPads. And kind of go for the last question here, to what degree has the industry helped shape your vision for mobility? Now, I've been involved with a lot of different industry groups trying to help understand this and trying to represent the university realm in the same time. For example, one of the groups I belong to is a desktop support leadership forum. And that desktop support forum has talked a lot about mobility, and they've talked a lot about walk-in support. And as we've taken a look at that, what the industry is doing has helped shape somewhat, but I think what the vendors are doing are also trying to push people to an idea of mobility that hasn't quite met what we're doing in the classroom. When you say mobility in BYOD, most businesses think virtualization. They think that content creation still comes from Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I think Boise State's vision of mobility and content creation on a mobile platform is much different than that. It's the creative use of apps. It is that content is far more than the written word. Content is audio. It is visual. It is dynamic. It is collaborating with different people. And as we finish out this presentation, I think that's really the lesson learned is technology is changing. Content creation is changing. And the way we deliver instruction and learning is changing. It is a collaborative field. It is which we can learn from one another. It's which we can take video technology and be able to display at any time, any place, lectures, and then we can take people in real time and help them collaborate together. We can take people in an asynchronous mode and help them collaborate together. And that learning is far more than the sage on the stage being able to present. Learning is a group effort in which we work together anytime and any place. Now, if you're interested in future upcoming webinars, we have 4 more coming. Like I said, this was one of 5 webinars of what we've been doing of supporting mobility and using mobility in the education environment. The next one is November 29th, Going Mobile at Boise State, helping faculty explore ideas and get started. And this is an exciting topic of how we've really interacted with faculty and kept that momentum going through the 1.5 years that we've been doing this experiment. I thank you all for your time in coming to this webinar. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. One of the most common questions I've always seen on a webinar is, will this presentation be available? We will post this PowerPoint presentation up on our mobile learning website and on the Google site that we did for the mobile learning webinar, mobile learning initiative webinar series. We'll post this PowerPoint up there so you have my contact information, you have something to refer back to, and that we can keep this conversation going. And I thank you very much for your time and your efforts.